If you have ever had a student tell you they have shoulder bursitis and you immediately panic about what to modify in your classes, then stick around. I'm Monica, and I help yoga teachers build confidence working with students who have pain using modern pain science principles. Today, I'm breaking down how to work with students who have shoulder bursitis, including what to say in that initial conversation, which poses to modify, and the language that actually helps their nervous system feel safe. By the end of this video, you're going to feel so much more prepared the next time a student tells you that they have bursitis. Now, let me start by saying this. Bursitis sounds really medical and intimidating, but once you understand what's happening, you'll realize that you can absolutely work with these students. You don't need to be a physical therapist. You just need to understand enough to offer intelligent modifications. First, let's talk about what bursitis is. A bursa is a small fluid-filled sac that sits between bones and soft tissues. Its job is to reduce friction. In the shoulder, the most commonly affected one is the subacromial bursa, which sits between the top of the shoulder blade and the rotator cuff tendons. Bursitis means inflammation of the bursa. When it becomes irritated, it can swell and become painful, especially with overhead movements or when the arm lifts away from the body. Now, here's the pain science piece that changes everything. Yes, there's inflammation in the tissue, but pain is a protective output from the brain. It's not just about the inflamed bursa. Someone can have significant inflammation and minimal pain, or minimal inflammation and a lot of pain. Context matters here, so their stress levels, their sleep quality, how safe their nervous system feels, all of these influence the pain experience. So when you're working with a student with bursitis, you're creating environments where their nervous system feels safe enough to explore movement. When a student tells you they have bursitis, here's what you could say. First, thank them for telling you and sharing that information. You could say, thank you for letting me know. This is really helpful information. Then you should ask when it started and if they're working with anyone like a doctor or a physical therapist. The goal here is to one, know if they have an actual diagnosis, and two, if the diagnosis is actually bursitis, and also if they're getting outside advice on movements that they should or should not be doing. Next, ask about specific movements. Ask them, have you noticed specific movements that tend to aggravate it? For bursitis, they'll usually tell you that overhead movements or lifting the arm out to the side feels uncomfortable. Then you should confirm that you'll offer some modifications in your class by saying, I'll offer some different options throughout class for some movements that we plan on doing that might not feel good for your shoulder right now. You notice what you're not doing? You're not diagnosing. You're not promising yoga is going to heal it. You're gathering information and confirming that you'll offer movement modifications. And this is well within your job description. The main thing you're reducing is overhead and abducted arm positions, especially with weight bearing. So for downward facing dog, which is often problematic because the arms are overhead and weight bearing, invite students to take extended puppy dog pose instead. Or downward facing dog with hands on blocks, which reduces the amount of weight that's bearing on the shoulder joints, and you can ask students to shift their weight back and put more weight in the lower half of their body. You can offer other options like tabletop and then just ask them to explore what feels okay for them today. For plank and chaturanga, you can invite them to take forearm plank. That might feel okay, or knees down, or just skip it altogether and step back to a shorter stance, downward facing dog, or maybe tabletop to reduce the amount of weight bearing on the shoulders. For poses with arms overhead like warrior one, you can invite them to keep their arms lower, maybe their hands in front of their heart, arms down by their sides, or they could place their hands on their hips if that feels okay. For side plank, which is particularly challenging because you are weight bearing with a shoulder abducted, you can invite students to lower their bottom knee down to their mat for support. Then you can use language like you might, or you're welcome to, or if this feels okay, to give students agency to decide what works for their body. So your job is to offer intelligent options and their job is to choose what feels best for them today. The words you use matter enormously. If you say, if you have a bad shoulder or don't do this, then you're reinforcing that their shoulder is bad or that it's less than, and this increases the protective response from their nervous system. Instead, think about saying, if your shoulder is sensitive right now, or if overhead movements don't feel good for your shoulder today. You see how saying sensitive and right now and today are temporary? This kind of phrasing doesn't make students feel like their shoulder is damaged. They acknowledge something is tender, but it's not permanent. Personally, I also avoid saying this will protect your shoulder because it implies the shoulder needs protecting. Instead, I say this gives your shoulder a break or this reduces demand on your shoulder. These language shifts make a difference in how students perceive their bodies. The goal is not to avoid shoulder movement forever. It's to reduce demand while their nervous system calms down, then gradually rebuild capacity. This is gradual exposure to movement. You progressively introduce movements the nervous system currently finds threatening, but in doses that don't trigger pain. So a student might avoid downward facing dog initially, then try it with hands on blocks for a breath or two, then a few breaths more, then without blocks. You see how you're gradually increasing demand in a way that lets their nervous system adapt. You're not prescribing things, you're creating opportunities for them to explore more challenging variations as they're ready. You should for sure encourage students to work with a physical therapist if they have not been diagnosed, if their pain is getting worse despite modifications, if they're in acute or severe pain where they can barely lift their arm, or if they ask questions outside of your scope of practice, like whether they should get a cortisone shot or not. You don't need to have all the answers to their questions. You just need to know when a student needs more support than a yoga class can provide. So to recap, understand that bursitis involves inflammation, but pain is influenced by the nervous system. Have a clear initial conversation, modify overhead and weight bearing positions, use language that reduces threat, and help them rebuild capacity gradually, and know when to refer out. So the next time a student tells you they have shoulder bursitis, you're going to be prepared. If you want to go deeper on working with shoulder injuries, I have a free rotator cuff injury training that teaches you about shoulder anatomy, common injuries, and how to think about modifications. It's completely free. I'll link it in the description below. I also have a full podcast episode on this topic titled Teaching Yoga to Students with Bursitis, what every yoga teacher should know. It goes much deeper into each of these points. You can find that link below. And if you're realizing that you want comprehensive support, learning how to work with injured students, not just shoulder injuries, but all types of injuries, I have a workshop called The First Step to Teaching Students with Pain. You could check that out too. And if you want ongoing support where you bring your actual students and we work through modifications in real time, check out my Teaching Students with Injuries Mentorship. Now, subscribe for more evidence-based teaching strategies because you can absolutely work with students who have bursitis.